Hello everyone, it's Nicole. Welcome back to my channel and another paper crafting video tutorial. I'm excited to share a couple of new Halloween card ideas, creating really fun backgrounds with products from the Simon Says stamp, Stamptember 2024 release. Yes, welcome to Stamptember 2024. These products are Simon Says stamp branded, meaning they will be restocked if they sell out. I'm going to start by creating kind of the autumn gourds background for my first card. These ideas can be used with products that you have or, these new products as well, but hopefully they give you some inspiration for creating your own cards, whether they're autumn cards, Halloween cards, Christmas, any occasion. We're going to start by building the background of our card here, and this is I'm going to call this card my pumpkin to talk about. I love that name for the stamp set we're using, but this is the thread plaid embossing folder. And embossing folders are so amazing for creating beautiful cards. So I have gone ahead and run that through my platinum die cutting machine. And I did this on some Lawn Fawn Dolphin cardstock. And now I'm taking some Spellbinders Onyx Silk and we are making some spatter all over this. I do use a plastic box for my spatter. I don't have a preference one way or the other there. And I am going to just kind of give it a little bit of that distressy look that I love. And I love this product for black spatter. I think it's amazing. Then I'm going to set that aside to dry. Now we're going to take another embossing folder. This is the Autumn Gourds, and this is incredible. Now, if you love the embossing folders that you can also die cut, this is for you because there are autumn gourd dies to go with this. Now I went ahead and embossed an entire panel and then die cut them. If you want the die to retain a little bit more of the detail, you can go ahead, die cut the shapes first, place them in the little wells of your embossing folder, and then run them through the embossing folder. I don't think it makes a huge difference here though. Simon Says Stamp does have 6 brand new ink cube colors for all of those who love the cubes and have been eagerly anticipating more cube colors. These are the 6 colors that were released for September 1st. I am going to be using some of these colors to color in my die cuts. All of my die cuts were die cut with white cardstock, and I am using Simon Says Stamp blending brushes and cube inks, some from this and some inks that are already from my stash. This is a combination of nutmeg and allspice for my pumpkins. Coloring white die cuts with inks is one of my favorite ways to achieve some beautiful dimension and really quick and easy coloring. If you don't want to color in with markers, this is my go-to way to do this. Another idea would be to die cut your pumpkin and gourd shapes from colored cardstock, run them through the embossing folder, and maybe even add a little shading with some inks. But if you want to start with a base color, that would be a great way to do it. What we're doing for our first card today, the first card background idea, is we're going to be creating some sentiments in the center of our embossed background, and then it's going to be surrounded with die cut elements, die cut fall elements to be specific. I love this for many cards, and I have been using this technique and this style of card for a lot of different card designs, and every single time it gives you beautiful results. And I think when you find a card style design that really works for you, go ahead and do that for many cards. There are no rules here, and I love being able to kind of reuse or repurpose a technique that particularly works, and this is just one that really does work every single time. From my stash, I did pull out some butter and honey inks, and I am adding some yellow gourds to my pumpkin and gourd background. I definitely want to have all of the fall colors and feels. Now, while I am making both of these cards a little bit more of that Halloween feel rather than the fall or Thanksgiving, just by switching up your greetings for this card, you could very much make this another occasion. You could even very easily put a birthday greeting on here or a hello greeting, an everyday friendship kind of greeting, and change it to work for whatever you need it for. So even though I am kind of going more with the Halloween feel for both of these cards, keep in mind that this one specifically really can, the design could work for several different things. I'm also using some latte and cappuccino inks from my stash for the rest of the gourds on this, or the pumpkins, gourds, whatever. And I'm even pulling in just a little bit of allspice into that latte and cappuccino color combo. I am working on the Simon Says Stamp glass mat today with the Simon Says Stamp blending brushes. They do make it super easy for cleanup. I've got some of the Simon Says Stamp microfiber cloths there that I am easily just kind of wiping away the ink so I'm not transferring one color to another. Now, while I am inking up all of these with the inks, I lay them on the background. I did walk away from this card overnight, and when I came back the next day, I had an idea for how to dress it up even more. That is a tip that I do want to share here today. If you are working on a card and something about it is just, just out of reach, you're just missing something, I find sleeping on it often is the cure. I will come back the next day or the next evening when I'm crafting, and I immediately know or have an idea of what I can add or take away from the design to make it work. In this case, we will be using a little foundry wax to ink around the edges. But I did kind of decorate the background. You can see I've just laid everything out. I haven't committed yet to anything. And it was about this point that I decided I really wanted to go more the Halloween route. So also brand new for the Stamptember 2024 release is this Spooky Windows card. We're going to use this more on the second card today. But I took the bats, the spider, and the web from this stamp set, and I am stamping them on white cardstock with some VersaFine Onyx black ink. And I need a couple of spiders, several bats. I think maybe I ended up using 4 bats, and then that one web. Adding these things into our pumpkin and gourd background will instantly give it kind of what I'm calling a spooky elegant vibe. We're going to have spooky fun next. This is more what I call a spooky elegant. You don't have to go all in with one stamp set either. I like being able to pull a few components from one into another card design. Also, we are using the Pumpkin to Talk About stamp set. This is a beautiful pumpkin background stamp made out of photopolymer. Pardon me, I cannot talk today. And then there are several greetings, plus there are coordinating dies for those greetings, which I love. From the coordinating dies out of the background, I die cut vellum rectangles, and then from the frame that coordinates, I die cut some gold frames for those. Using greetings from the Pumpkin to Talk About, I am stamping those greetings on the vellum, and I'm going to heat emboss with antique gold embossing powder. That antique gold of the embossed sentiment is going to coordinate back to the frame beautifully. I'm using some tweezers to hold that in place while I'm applying my embossing powder and heat setting. These sentiments are going to go in the center of the card. One of the beautiful things about doing this on vellum is that the vellum, you're going to be able to see through it to what is behind. In this case, there's going to be peaks of pumpkins, gourds, spider webs, and it's really going to leave you with a beautiful result. Look how pretty that antique gold embossing powder looks on the sentiments, on that vellum. Vellum is magic every single time. Would you guys agree? I love it. Using the tip of my ring finger, I am brushing a little bit of the gilded foundry wax around the edges of my die cut pumpkins and gourds. Just a little bit here and there. I like to kind of start a little bit more on the conservative side, and then if I need to add more, I will go ahead and do that. So you'll notice that on this first one especially, it was a really good indication of how far could I go with this product and get the result I like. With this product, you do want to heat set it. Otherwise, as it dries, it will wipe away. So around the edges of my die cuts, I am adding a little bit of that foundry wax and then heat setting it. It's going to leave us with a beautiful gilded effect that coordinates back to the gold of the frames that we're going to place around the greetings, the gold embossing of the die cuts. It's really going to be amazing. I love how this turns out. I like to use my ring finger or a finger, but I do find my ring finger, as it's the weakest finger on your hand typically, gives me the best results. I can just kind of smooth it around the edges a little bit and I don't get too heavy of an application. So we're going to do this on all of the pumpkins and gourds. You will notice that I try to mix it up and not do it the same. It's not going to be the same anyway, but I don't want to completely cover the color or anything like that. We're just adding a little something to this. For the cardstock of the frames that are going to go around the greetings, this is my current favorite gold cardstock. It's called Brushed Gold and it's by Spellbinders. It gives you a really soft brushed look that I think is not quite so, not so bold. I like that it's a little bit more muted, a little more subtle, and I think it's going to work really, really well for this. Now, once we have all of our images with our gilded foundry wax, it's time to start putting it all together. And what we're going to do is put our sentiments in the center and surround it with all of these images. And just for fun and for a fun touch, we're going to be interspersing the web, some spiders and bats to round it all out. Now the thin gold, brushed gold frames are very thin. So I'm going to put a super little thin line of glue on the back. If you have a fine tip applicator on your glue or the fine tip nozzle on the glue press, I would recommend that. And then I'm going to simply place them over the vellum. And I really like to put an acrylic block on top to help hold that down and nice and flat. We're going to do the same thing for the second frame. And you'll notice that they are slightly different in size. So there's a couple of different sizes of these frames in the coordinating dies that are made to work with the greetings. There's also individual die cuts for the greetings if you want to die cut the words out themselves. Now I opted to do the blocks today, but I think that the individual dies for the words would be, or for the phrases would be awesome. Next, we're going to start gluing our images down to our embossed and spattered card background. We've got a pumpkin and we're going to tuck a spider next to it here. And you'll notice that I'm going to concentrate all of my images around the perimeter of the design for the most part. There's going to be a few little bits and bobs that are going to be underneath the greetings. We want a little bit peeking through, but there's really no sense in having too much underneath. I don't want it to distort the sentiment. We're going to tuck this web partially underneath the gourd up here. And I'm just going to do a quick little swipe and cleanup of the glue around Let's Give 'em Pumpkin to talk about. How funny is that? And laying it in place without adhering it, it's going to give me a good idea of kind of the area I have to work with. Let's go ahead and put Happy Halloween down as well. Now with the 3 orange pumpkins we're including, I did try to do a visual triangle with how I am using those. The images are also going to hang off the edges of the card. This card background is 4¼ by 5½ inches, so it will fill the entire front of an A2 card base. And those little pieces hanging off the edge, we are going to do something with the majority of those. What I love to do anytime I'm creating an all over type of background like this, instead of die cutting and inking a whole bunch of additional images just to hang off the edge, I like to give, you know, an all over application and then trim it away and let's see what we have left. Can we use some of those leftovers to fill in some of the areas? In this case, I was able to get away with just what you see here, and what we trim off is going to fill in any open areas. Once I have the majority of the images in place, it is time to hide our adhesive, hide our liquid glue back behind the thin gold frame and the embossing on our sentiment phrases. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere the first one, and I'll put an acrylic block on top to help hold that down and flat. And then we're going to do the same thing on the second one. I'm going to run that thin bead of glue, add little dabs here and there. And then we're just going to pop this in place. Then it's time to finish the spooky embellishing. We're going to add some bats. This will also serve to fill in some of the area that maybe doesn't have a pumpkin or a gourd. And I love the little pops of black. It ties in nicely to the black spatter of the background. And we have another little spider that I'm going to tuck up here, kind of close to the web, slightly overlapping our sentiment. Now that is something fun as well. Most of the elements on the card are underneath our sentiments, but the spider is going to be kind of almost crawling up on top of it. And that was very intentional. I'm not quite sure where I want to put that bat yet, so I did hold off. I know I put glue on him, but I decided, let's just wait a second. We can come back to him. And I ultimately decided, yeah, let's go ahead and add him down here. Okay, so now we're going to flip our panel over and trim away all of that excess. And I really love a long pair of shears for this. You can just slide it right along the edge of the card, and I'm being careful to kind of keep all of those little pieces. And now let's fill in. See how it gives you the illusion that there's even more? I love it. I think there were only a couple of tiny little slivers that I ended up not using. And I'm going to try to scatter them around enough to balance out and fill in any of those open areas. Maybe one or two more. And this one is pretty teeny tiny, but I think it's going to be great down here along the bottom. And there we go. We'll glue this to a white top fold card base, add a scattering of some of these awesome gems from Spellbinders. I think this is the graphite color. I love these, and I think it works especially well for this wonderful card background. We're just going to add a little scattering here and there. Look at the little touch of sparkle it adds to the overall spooky effect of the card. And I want to just fill in all of those little areas. I'm using the tip of the Place and Pierce tool to pick them up and keep my fingers out of the adhesive as much as possible. And that is it for the first card. Let's give them something. Let's give them pumpkin, pardon me, to talk about. I can hardly say it this way. In my mind, I am singing. Okay, so let's move on to our spooky, cute spooky Halloween card. This Droopy web embossing folder is incredible. So yes, both card backgrounds today were created with the embossing folders from Simon Says Stamp. I love web embossing folders, and this one is going to be phenomenal. We are going to go ahead and run this through our die cutting machine with the platform, the 3D embossing folder, or the embossing folder. I don't know if this one's 3D. And the top cutting plate. I did this on a piece of smooth white cardstock, and then we're going to pop it out. And on the embossed side, it would be fun to do a blackout technique on the reverse side, but we are going to do the embossed side. We're going to do a really great ink blend of greens and purples, starting with Twisted Citron Distress Oxide ink in the center of that web. We're going to go in a circular motion to apply our ink, and I am doing a very heavy hand with my application. Then we're going to go around this with Lucky Clover. As always, when you're doing an ink blend background, I do feel like it gets worse before it gets better. In this one, you're going to notice that a lot of the green, it ends up just being a highlight in the center. It is not going to be as prominent as you see here. Next, we're going to take Wilted Violet, and we're going to go around the Lucky Clover and blend that in. As you are blending, start pulling that color a little bit up into the green. It's going to just soften it a bit and give it a really fun effect. Then we're going to go in with some black soot. Black soot is the magical color in this case. It is my absolute favorite for giving that spooky vibe. So we're going to go around the perimeter of the card here with black soot, pulling that up a little bit and pulling it up and over the web because it's really going to help define that droopy web beautifully. But I don't want to lose the color. I want that beautiful pop of green and purple to show through. So I'm just going around, and as I pull up the droopy web, I kind of lighten my touch so it's hitting the embossed raised area, but not super filling it all in. Once I'm happy with my ink blending, and I'm just going back over with the purple brush a little bit here and then a little bit more black, I will take a distress sprayer, and I want to spritz this with water from a distress sprayer to give some oxidized splatters all over. That is the first step in our spooky process. Next, we're going to take a little bit of the decayed Distress Mica stain, and we're going to give a good spritz over our background. This is going to give us a shimmery, beautiful finish. And then we're going to take some of the Spellbinders Onyx Silk, and we're going to tap that over our background as well for a little bit of black splatter. So lots of detail going into the background of the card because the rest of the card ends up being fairly simple with some fun greetings. Now, just like the first card, the magical use of vellum is going to come into play, and it's going to work so well with this design. I did think I needed a little more spatter, so I added a little more right there. We're going to set this aside to completely dry while we work on the rest of our card. Taking a piece of vellum, I have my stamp images from the Spooky Windows stamp set. I'm going to prep the vellum with a powder tool and stamp Happy Halloween, a spider, the string for the spider, some bats, and the eyeballs from the Spooky Windows set with some clear embossing ink. We're going to heat emboss these then with some black embossing powder to really make them stand out. Full disclosure, I first stamped these on white cardstock, but found that that really took away from the beauty of the background. Whenever this happens, vellum is my go-to for just solving that issue. It still is a light background. It still allows you to very easily be able to see the images, read the words, all of those things, but it gives you that translucent, very beautiful effect that doesn't distract and take away from the beauty of the embossed and ink blended background. And for me, for this card, that is really what I was looking for. It still has a fun, playful effect, but I think it really works well here. So once I have my black embossing powder, I am going to heat set this, take the coordinating dies from the Spooky Windows, and die cut everything for my card. I love the black embossing powder here. It really pops. and it's going to pop against the vellum and especially against our ink blended background. So let's go ahead and die cut all of these pieces. Now that I have that, we're going to hide our adhesive back behind the embossed areas again, using that fine tip applicator on our glue press, just like before. Our background has dried, and so it's very easy to quickly place some glue here and there back behind the words and pop them in place. Words and images, pardon me. Now, before I fully lay down the word Halloween, I do want to tuck the string for the spider underneath, hiding it underneath a solid part of the embossing for the word. Something about vellum is when you do add a liquid to it, it does tend to want to roll up. I highly recommend something heavy, acrylic blocks, a book, a stack of paper, something like that on top to help hold it flat until that glue dries. It'll dry nice and flat and stay put. Look at how great the vellum looks against that background. So much better than a stark white would have looked. I love that it makes the embossing folder the star of the show in this case. We're going to hide our adhesive behind the eyes as well, and taking the Boo and Eek greetings from the Spooky Windows stamp set, we are going to stamp those with black ink down here next to the little eyeballs, just to add a little bit more to the background. I stamped Eek, I can't say that, twice, and stamped Boo once. I love adding little words and phrases like this when I have a background that isn't overly filled with other things. We're going to add the bats up kind of high, and this is really going to help balance out the design beautifully. We'll glue the entire thing to a white top fold card base, and then of course we need to add some sort of embellishment. I felt like the eyes and the skull and the word Halloween needed some gems, don't you? I love the way this really makes the title or the sentiment of the card pop. I've also stamped and embossed a greeting from the Witch Please stamp set that says "Let's hang for a spell," popped it up on some foam adhesive, and placed it underneath Happy Halloween. I feel like that rounds out the greeting on this card perfectly. We're going to scatter a few additional graphite gems for sparkle around our card, not just for the eyes, but all over the place. I like how it almost looks like little dewdrops on the web, and our second card is complete. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for these 2 Halloween cards featuring products from the Simon Says Stamp Stamptember 2024 release. The supplies I used to create my cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Stay tuned all month long for fun exclusives and surprises and so much more. We will see you in the next video. Bye! Thank you so much for joining me today for another paper crafting tutorial. I love being able to share with this incredible community of crafters. I want to give a huge shout out and special thank you to my amazing Patreon members. If you're interested in joining Patreon, please click the link in the description underneath the video here on YouTube. Patreon is a private community where you can support more of what I do. There is exclusive content, information, and behind-the-scenes content. Top-tier members will receive a handmade birthday card during your birthday month, access to D-Stash, and monthly exclusive lives, plus so much more. We would love to have you join our growing community. Please be sure to subscribe to my channel, click that like button, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to always be notified when I have a new video. Thanks for watching!